for mayor, deputy mayor, and Ward 7 and 8 candidates. My name is Sam Odrowski. I'm the new editor of the New Tecumseth Times. I just began the position 2 weeks ago and will be moderating tonight's event. Candidates will be asked a series of questions and each have 3 minutes to answer. These questions have not been provided to any of the candidates in advance. As candidates answer questions, feel free to write down any questions you may have over at the table there. There's a piece of paper and pens as well as pencils. So to start, candidates will have 2 minutes to make introductory remarks. And after each candidate answers, the speaking order will shift to the right. So the person who spoke first will speak last, and the person who spoke second will speak first. All right, so to begin, feel free to make your introductory remarks. We'll start at the left side of the table.
Make sure to turn on the mic and speak into the mic. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. It's an honor to be here. I've lived my entire life in Tottenham, New Tecumseth, or Tecumseth Township for many years. My grandparents bought property in 1920. It's 102 years ago. I'm not quite that old, but I can tell you a lot of the mornings I do feel that old. So I've seen firsthand Tottenham grow over the years. A lot of good things, some not so good. But the important thing to me is I still call it my home. I'm still here. A lot of people I grew up with have moved on, but I like it here and I have no plans on leaving. I've been involved in the community for many years, coached softball, soccer, sponsored different groups for the kids, for adults. I've been two-time past president of the Tottenham District Lions Club, Inc., two-time president of the Tottenham and Beaton Chamber of Commerce, and I was also the ward councillor in Ward 5 from 2003 to 2010. I decided to run again because Tottenham needs a voice with a proven record and one who does not back down from what the people of Tottenham want. You have to stand up. You have to push your point. If you sit there and do nothing, like some of the current councillors do, you'll never get anything. You have to be vocal. There's a lot of issues that need attention, but due to time restrictions, I cannot go into them all. Hopefully they come up through the night. But I have flyers at the back, which lists things that I've seen and people going door to door and I've talked to over the last 4 years have concerns about. And that's pretty much it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Jacks, and I, too, am honored to be here today and want to thank everyone for taking the time to come out in person and meet with us. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Tottenham. My family has been in this community for almost 50 years. It was a wonderful childhood. Just after high school, I did leave and move to the big city to pursue both school and my career. But just over a decade ago, I returned to raise my daughter, and I wouldn't want to do that anywhere else. Over my time campaigning over these last 4 weeks, I've been asked quite a bit, what makes you qualified to be a candidate or a councillor for New Tecumseth? And to that, I will say this. In my career for almost 2 decades, I've been focused on organizational leadership, and I've been in a leadership director role. During that time, I was no stranger to a budget, a P&L sheet, strategic planning, performance management, all skills that I think translate well into the requirements and the role and responsibility of a councillor as we move forward in the next 4-year term. In 2019, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to transition my career into something that I found very fulfilling. I went back to school and became an ICF credentialed professional coach and facilitator. Now I have the privilege of working with leaders across the country in all sectors and organizations to help them up-level their priorities and skills around emotional intelligence, empathy, creating diversity and inclusion within their cultures, and working on strategic plans for change management. Also parallels that I think will translate very well into the role of counselor. Thank you.
3 minutes goes by really quick. I feel like I'm on a speed dating site, right? But I'm not on a speed dating site. I've never been there, and my wife is on row 3. She'll attest to that. Anyways, how many of you are from Ward 7? Oh, 1, 2, 3. Oh, and my wife 4. Thank you very much. There's information on the back, and I was hoping that at least half of you will be from Ward 7 so that you can just read everything here. But I'm going to have to then read off of my paperwork. So, my name is Peter. A little bit about you and a little bit about me. You live in a ward that is graced with gently rolling hills, beautiful vistas, and impressive fields of crops or forested areas, or you may live in a cluster of homes or possibly a friendly subdivision. Either way, you live in a vibrant community and your concerns are important to me. I live in the countryside. I am deeply committed to keeping our community clean and safe for all residents. I lived in New Tecumseth since 1992, give or take. First in Tottenham and now in a rural area. My wife and I raised our family here. We have 2 sons and a dog. I am an active in the community, having acted as an assistant coach in baseball and soccer. I have been on the environmental committee. I have spoken to council via deputation regarding the need for inter-community transit services. I have been a candidate in 2010, 2014, and 2018 municipal elections, so the process is not new to me. During my previous candidacy, I expressed my support for greater community connections through improved walking or cycling trails and corridors and inter-community transit service supported by local sponsorship and fares, and an alternate plan to replace the existing administration building, an expansion of events to attract tourism into our communities to help our downtowns, which are suffering greatly. And you can refer to my Facebook page for that. Even if you're not in the ward, you can still go there if you have ideas, so you can scream at your councillors, whoever they may be. I have corresponded regularly with premiers on issues that I feel are important, and I will continue doing so. I am proud to be the vice president of the TBDCC, the Tottenham Beaton District Chamber of Commerce, and they do. We'll talk later.
Sorry.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Gabriel. It's nice to meet you all and to see you all here tonight, taking out time from your evening on a cold evening like this one. I would like to thank Sam, actually, for organizing this lovely event for us to come and meet together and talk about a platform. I also like to thank the candidates for, the guts they have. It takes a lot of courage for every candidate's opponents and candidates in other wards to put their name forward to run for office. A lot of our platforms will be the same. So I'm going to give you a little bit about myself. I'm a father of 4 beautiful kids in the back there. They're coming to support me, and my wife sitting there in the last row. My wife and I moved to this area. We were kids. It was 12 years ago. We just moved outside of Tottenham, and we saw how the town is changing. My wife was just a fresh graduate from Guelph University, and I was still going through medical school overseas in Egypt. We were coming back and forth, and we kind of saw how the concept of boiling a frog, when you see a distant relative grow up in front of you, you kind of, or their parents don't really notice the different changes that happen. But when you travel and you come back and forth, you see how much that town has changed, that child has changed. And our town, I felt, has been changing, not for the better, but for the worse, especially for the last 5 years. We made our permanent move back here in 2016, and in 2017, I opened the first walking clinic in Beaton for over a decade, I believe, serving the community of Beaton and much needed medical health care in that area. Our patients are not just in Beaton, but from Tottenham, Alliston, and beyond, even Everett and south end of Barrie. My platform is actually very simple. It runs on 3. So we'll come back to that.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joe Feiner, and I'm running for council member of Ward 7. I've been in the area for 38 years. I've owned and operated a construction company since then. I've been a volunteer since I moved up here. Past president of the Rotary Club twice, Special Olympic coach. I teach yoga to the handicapable at Camp Hill, and now I joined the Lions Club as well. Being that I worked in the township mainly, I've seen a lot of things that happen in this township that concern past council and administration. I'd like to bring the community back together again, to bring voice to us. We've been suppressed, and we haven't been able to share what's on our minds. Council hasn't been open to any feedback and opinions from the community. Some of the issues that I'd like to work on are the transparency of what's going on in council, controlling and observing the administration in their spending of our tax dollars. Some of the things that are going on right now with spending are just costing us way too much money as taxpayers. We got to make developers accountable for the infrastructure. That infrastructure and the cost after they leave doesn't belong on our shoulders as taxpayers. Some of the strengths that I bring are being self-employed. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie McClellan. I'm currently the ward councillor for Ward 6 of New Tecumseth. I'm running on a platform that highlights 3 things our residents deserve: fiscal management, road safety, and building a livable community. The pandemic has turned from a medical crisis into a financial one for many residents and businesses. The town can and should be actively working to lessen the burden it places on citizens by striving to keep taxes low and spend revenue wisely. I will champion every opportunity to do that. Speeding on our roads is a major issue. If elected, I promise to bring more traffic control measures to our neighborhoods, as well as push for more speed monitoring to keep our streets safe. Our residents deserve it. Our town has more potential than any municipality in the province. I believe we can unlock that through smart planning and a focus on using development revenue to increase our quality of life. This includes more green space, more parks, and finally linking our trail system together. I will strive to build a more livable community for all residents. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tony Veltri. I'm running for mayor. I'm very happy to be back in Tottenham. It is the only ward I won in 2018, so I thank you all for that. I feel more like home here. I don't have anyone to debate here tonight, and that's I don't think sad's the right word. Not surprised Donna's not here. I'm a little surprised Richard's not here. They're going around, everyone's talking about wanting to lead, and they're not here because of who organized this event. You're going to face angry crowds at some point in your term, and if you can't handle standing up for your record at an all-candidates meeting, then you shouldn't be going around campaigning that you're going to be a leader, because you should be here, and this was the opportunity. Anyways, I'm not going to belabor. I've been a local journalist for 32 years here. At some point, I'm sure I've pissed off everyone in this room, and I hope at least people can agree that, regardless of my opinions, they were always on the side of the public. I argued with councillors over the years. One is still suing me, and so I'm not afraid. You always know where I stand. So let's get on with the questions. Hopefully for the ward councillors, because that's who should have the exposure tonight. Thank you.
Perfect. So we'll start with Andrea for the first question. You can pass the mic. So What sets you apart as a candidate, and why should residents vote for you? And everybody has 3 minutes to answer.
Okay. Yep. Okay. What sets me apart as a resident is my intention for leading growth for the future. I've heard from very many people that we need change, and although I have followed as a resident of Tottenham and Ward 8, I would say at a moderate level, what has gone on in council and throughout our municipality over the last 10 years. I also bring a fresh perspective, and without having had council experience, I am looking forward only. It would be easy to get caught up in critiquing the way that the council has run, but no council has been perfect, nor will be the one that is elected. I think that our vision for the future needs to be about change. It needs to be about growth. It needs to be about communication and bringing people back together. That wasn't a ding for me?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
that was, I think,
Oh,
someone
okay.
in the audience there. No, you're good, sorry.
My planned approach is this. I have a steep learning curve, and I'm fully responsible for that, and it is something that I welcome. There are many people within our community that have great ideas, have a ton of information, and have had special interests in the various causes and concerns that Ward 8 residents have. I can lean on those people, and by creating a network through communication, bring back the transparency, visibility, and connection that we need in order to make decisions. People have asked me over the last 4 weeks, what are you going to vote, Andrea? What would you vote for this? What would you have voted for that? And the truth is, it doesn't matter. I'm one resident. What we need in this ward is a public servant who is willing to do the work, go door to door, create the emails, databases, create the connection points so that when decisions are being voted on at council, it is not what is Andrea Jacks going to vote, it is what is Ward 8 going to vote. What best represents the consensus of the taxpayers and residents in this community. Thank you.
Yep, you're next.
She has sufficient time, I think.
No, it's 3 minutes each candidate.
You all leave early because.
Probably almost at 3 minutes.
You had 30 seconds left.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. That's always a difficult question because can you hear me okay? Yeah, because I always try not to be too wordy in describing yourself. Let me tell you something I did a couple of years ago. I created a website for New Tecumseth called localbuzz.ca. So if you have a phone, go to localbuzz.ca. Basically, it's a website that has New Tecumseth services and product providers on there and retailers. And if you want to do a search for someone in New Tecumseth, you just go in, type in painter or dog food or whatever, and it goes to it. And I don't charge for that. It's a website that I built specifically for the town to help local businesses survive difficult times. As you know, they've been finding it difficult over the last 3 years. So as a realtor as well, I speak to a quite vast variety of people. In Ward 7, you have both the urban group, and then you also have the suburban group. And then you have the mixture in subdivisions that are kind of neither, each or both. And also, if you look at the Pines, you've got another community altogether. So often you find that the issues in one community are not exactly the same issues in the other community, and you have to be able to balance off everyone's needs, and I'm able to do that. I've been a realtor for 25 years. I work with contracts. I understand the minute part of contracts, and I'm very good at it. I understand the need for local housing, and I've gone into that as well, and understand the hurdles that we have. Not everybody wants to, discuss that realistically, but we need to discuss that, so please bring it up later if you can. And I don't really give up. I ran in 2014, I ran in 2018. Regardless of the number of votes, I went out there and I knocked on doors and I met people. I'm hoping that if you're in Ward 7, I had a chance to knock on your door, and if not, I hope to get there soon. But even if you're not in Ward 7, by all means, pick up a piece of paper, because there are issues on there that you may want to discuss with your council or your deputy mayor or your mayor, whoever he or she may be. And I hope you do that. So we have better communication. I want to refer back to 2018. I was against the administration center specifically because back then I looked forward and I saw that our finances were not going to hold up. There were cracks in the distance regarding business, regarding environment, and now we see that those are coming forward and causing a lot of issues. If we look at the current budget and do forward projections with the real rate of inflation, not the one that it's based on, we're going to be in hot water if we don't do something. And I don't know that if the people who got you here can get you out of it. So we need some new ideas. I'm going to ramble on, so I'm just going to stop my time and give it to David here.
Well, as Peter said, it's hard to talk about yourself and list your points of strong, why you should run. I'm running for the office of Deputy Mayor, and I believe the office is very important because it brings balance between the council and the mayoralship. I believe we need strong leadership in the office of Deputy and Mayor of this town. I believe strong leadership is more than social media posts or making yourself look good in front of council, in front of the public, while others look bad. I believe strong leadership is uniting council, making them realize that we're not against each other, but we are for this town. We do everything for the benefit of this town and its constituents. I believe that I'm a medical doctor by training, so and I run a walk-in clinic, and I see a lot of people with a lot of frustration. Number one is accessible healthcare. What are we doing about accessible healthcare as a town? Being in the system, I know how to fix the problem of accessible healthcare. There's a dissociation of what we need and the dissociation between the ministries on the provincial level and on the municipal level of what we can do. There are very practical steps. They're on my website. I have posted about them, how we can get to accessible healthcare. But main issues is that we're growing at a faster rate than what we can sustain. I ran as the MPP candidate for Simcoe Grey in 2022, just this past election. And within my debates and in my campaigning, a lot of the talking points and debate points with Brian Saunderson, who's the current MPP for Simcoe Grey, the point was brought back to the courts of the municipal level and said, well, about MZOs and developments and all that, it's the municipal level and council are the ones that are requesting these MZO changes, and they want these developments. I can see why. It's very lucrative to get property taxes from sprawling subdivisions that come up everywhere. But when you talk about it on the municipal level or the council say it's the provincial government that's forcing us. We have to grow by 80% in the next 25 to 30 years. We have to develop about 1,000 plus acres, and it's the provincial level is pushing this. The problem is that everybody's deflecting blame. Everybody's throwing the ball in the other person's court. We cannot develop at this rate sustainably. We cannot put on sprawling houses upon houses, row upon row, without having problems, rise in crime rates, rise in traffic accidents. It's frustrating just to get to work from the traffic jams. Thank you.
Unlike Peter and David, I don't have a problem talking about myself. Probably one of my favorite subjects. One of the things that separates me is I did volunteer in this community for 38 years. I know how to work in a group setting for the good of the community. We have to get along as a volunteer. It's actually costs money to become a volunteer. And it'll save money if we have a council that gets along rather than spending our tax dollars on the integrity commissioner. Another strength is having my own business for 47 years in construction. I know how to work with other trades. I know how to work with employees, how to get along. Being that I worked in this township for most of those 37 years, I've seen and I've met so many people and I've heard concerns. I've seen how our roads are being built. I've seen how our subdivisions are being built. I'm hands-on. I've been around. To bring attention to what's going on in our township with the municipality, I staged a hunger strike for 2 weeks on our municipal steps. It's my love for the community that fed me those 2 weeks. There's no self-gain. This is all about our community. It's about bringing us together again the way we used to be when we were separated as Beaton, Tottenham, and Alliston. It was service clubs that built these communities. And that's what we need again, is to be able to voice ourselves when it comes to having concerns in council, and it's about standing together when something isn't right. Thank you.
Okay, what sets me apart? I believe my communication does. I take great pride in making sure that I get back to people within minutes when they get a hold of me. And I'm quite accessible. I often make the joke I rarely ever leave town, which is exactly true. I don't take vacations. I just play a lot of baseball, and here I am. But if you paid attention for the last 4 years, you'll have seen a trend on council that I ask very difficult questions. And I'm not scared to ask very difficult questions because they're needed. They're not only needed here in New Tech, but they're needed up at the county. We send 28.7% of your property taxes collected up to Simcoe County. What do they do? What services do we get? Are we getting the services that we're paying for? They just seem so far off in the distance up in Midhurst. I want to get there. I want to ask the tough questions. I want to make sure that New Tecumseth, being the third highest financial contributor to the county, I want to make sure that we're getting those services. So that's why I chose to step up from running for Ward 6 to running for deputy mayor. I am hungry to get to that county and find out what's going on. Where's all our money going? Are we getting bang for our buck? Are the services that the county offers, are they being utilized here? You know, I'd love to partner with the county, with New Tech, and bring some affordable housing here. I mean, I have goals. I do my homework. We get 500-page agendas on a Friday night, or sorry, a Friday afternoon, and we have to be locked and loaded by Monday at 6. So you have to read it. You have to read it twice, maybe 3 times, and I do that. I dedicate my time to municipal politics. It's a passion of mine, and I think my communication skills, and it's not only dealing with people's concerns or questions that they have, but it's making sure that the community is informed when we're having meetings or working sessions. It's that constant communication that I pride myself in. Thank you.
Sorry, just for clarification, because it's been what was the question?
Yep, no worries at all. If at any time the candidates need a reminder, feel free to ask. It's what sets you apart as a candidate, and why should residents vote for you?
Well, if you consider the campaigns that we're running, the 3 of us are on social media. So if you follow Facebook or Twitter, you see how the various campaigns are going. If you read the incumbents, they're not mayor incumbents, but they're longtime members of council. They're running what's called the front runner race, nothing controversial. List your, whatever committees you were on. But talk in general terms, I'm for healthcare, I'm for this and that, and I'm going to be great leader, but the fact is they're ignoring the reality of what's ahead of us. And I've been pointing to the New Tecumseth long-term financial plan and it's clear what's coming. Is they're forecasting a 13% tax increase to make sure they can pay for whatever they've got us into. And you don't hear the other campaigns talking about that. These are important issues. You can promise anything, but a 13% tax increase, double-digit water and sewer rate increases, you can't do anything with those kinds of tax rates about to hit us. Beaton wants a $20 million recreation center. We've got the administration center that was supposed to open in August. Doesn't even look like it could be open next August. Roads need fixing. These are the kind of things that I believe I've been addressing and open on that the others haven't. And I believe that's what differentiates me from the others.
Thank you. Does this, yeah, okay, it's on. All right. What sets me apart from the other two candidates in this ward is, one, I showed up. And Andrea is quite right. There is a steep learning curve in this job. I was there for 7 years, so I have the advantage of I know how the system works. I know staff, when they send out the papers every Friday to a councillor, they give you the weekend to look into it, which is much time because most people are closed. But what I learned in those 7 years is they make those reports because they want you down their road. They don't want you coming up with ideas to go down a different path. They have their meetings and they say, okay, this is what we want. So let's make them feel like they have no choice but to go down that road. That's one thing when I first got into it, because it is a steep learning curve. I didn't realize until you get into it. And then you find out it's not all hugs and kisses. They do what they have to do to get what they want. I'm not trying to trash staff, but it's just the way it works. So I have more experience. I'm already up to date on how the system works. I'm ready to go. If I'm lucky enough to win the election, I don't necessarily have to learn the system. I have to learn the issues. There are going to be tough issues in the next few years. Being on council is no different running a business. I've been running my own business for 32 years, and I'm still going, so I must be doing something right. Everybody has a wish list, just like I do, but at the end of the day, you have to come back to reality. We are spending your money when we're sitting in those chairs. You're the boss, and we have to all recognize that, and we have to ask the tough questions to get down to what the real answers are. And I have a proven track record of how to do that, and I've always done that. Thank you.
All right. For the next question, it is with the province mandating development and it being a local concern, how do you hope to balance residential and economic development with environmental sustainability in the small town feel here in New Tecumseth? And you go first, Barrett. Yeah, we just pass it to the left each. No, Peter. No, sorry, Barrett? Or Peter Bargotti, sorry, I misread your. Sorry, yeah. No, it's past to the left.
Well, that's an important question. Let's look at affordable housing for a second. Let's call it obtainable housing, because the word affordable seems to disappeared from our vocabulary the last couple of years. I'm constantly reading about fights between greedy developers or this or that, and it turns into a real exercise in animosity. Let's forget about all that. Let's look at it the realistic way. Builders have a business. You may not like it, but that's what they do. They have a business. They employ thousands of people. Those people work in our communities. They build homes that people can afford to buy, and those homes support taxes for our infrastructure. If you don't have a certain amount of construction, the reality is that your infrastructure will suffer greatly because you simply don't have the tax inputs to take care of those things, which means that everyone else is going to have to be paying more tax to fix the same thing over and over. Now, it doesn't mean you just have sprawling subdivisions and don't worry about things like the environment and whatnot. That is actually a negative because, and I don't want to get too far into it because we can go for hours on this, but if you even look at just paving a piece of land, you take an acre, If it rains, a third of the water runs off that acre, 2/3 of it sinks into the ground. If you pave it, 96% of the water runs off of that acre, and it all goes to your neighbor's property, or your neighbor's property. So building stupidly just creates more problems down the road, and we see what those problems can happen if you have floods. So yes, we need sustainable construction in order to provide more accessible housing for individuals, and we need a broader type of housing, not just a bunch of individual homes. We need apartments because not everybody wants to be a homeowner. You know, we need more properties like the Tecumseth Pines, where people have the opportunity of having their own house on their lot, but they pay a lease as opposed to buying the land underneath. Because when you break down the cost of a house, it's more expensive to build a house here than it is in Toronto. The only difference is that underneath the house in Toronto, you've got a piece of land that is worth 3 times the amount of money, which is why a townhouse in Tottenham is $800,000, and the townhouse in Aurora is $2.3 million. It's not the quartz toilets, okay? So, you know, people have to understand that the value of the land underneath is what drives the price of the house up. So we need a certain amount of land released in order to build, in order to bring the overall cost of those parcels down and to make the houses more affordable to buy. And not everybody wants to hear that. They'd rather hear something about greedy developers or a battle and this and that, but that's just not the realistic way of looking at it. Okay, so rather than picking fights with people, and I am not affiliated with any builders, I tell you right now, I'm not. Let's look at them as a tool to figure out how to get what we need from them for our infrastructure, for our trail system, for our parks, to improve what we have here. And they're the tool, and we are the ones who have to be the driver's seat. So build smartly, build homes you need, find more opportunities for people so they can afford to live here and not have to move 2 hours north, because I've talked to a lot of residents whose kids had to move out of the area. And let's try to get some more taxes in so we can take the pressure off of our shoulders.
So I think the biggest lie here that we're going to debunk this evening is that the more houses you build, the more subdivisions you put in, the cheaper the houses have become. How's that been working out for you? A subdivision house here, even a semi-detached, is going over $1 million. And in Foster's Forest, which I believe is kind of a model of proper developing in rural areas where it's just outside of our town, but each house is built on 1 acre to 2 on its own septic and own well. And as Peter was saying, a lot of the water goes back into the grounds. They've worked with the land. They put houses along the hills and along the forests. They didn't level the forests. They didn't level the gorges and put sprawling rows upon rows of subdivision. So, and their houses 5 years ago were at the same rate as a subdivision house inside of Bradford. So comparing the two, you see that when you put more houses, it doesn't bring the property, the value of the property down, or it doesn't become obtainable housing or affordable housing. The problem is that inflation, and the government is not going to drop down the prices of houses because we're going to have a housing crisis. We're going to have a crash, a market crash, and they're not going to see that, because if your house, which you bought last year for $1 million plus, all of a sudden is only worth $600,000. Then a lot of people are going to default on their mortgages. So anyone that comes and tells you, if I'm elected, I'm going to bring down the prices of houses, is a fairy tale. I once heard this joke lately that a kid goes to his father and says, "Dad, what do all stories begin with once upon a time in a faraway land?" He said, "No, son. Some stories begin when I'm elected, I will do this, this, and that." So this is a fairy tale if someone comes and tells you that when I'm elected, I'm going to bring down the prices of housing. What I have noticed running my business, when I was in med school, I actually ran a construction business. I'm still being consulted by large churches. My church is a mega church, and they just put in a pretty big building. And they consult me on construction projects all the time. But my experience with that has shown that to cut down and to run a successful business and to run a successful town is to cut down on costs, the costs of what you're doing. You bring down the costs you trim the fat. It's the same thing in healthcare. You don't cut from doctors and nurses that are seeing the patient one-on-one. You cut down from administration fees. Same thing with the town. Same thing with the business. I think a lot of us are business owners or come from, whether you own a construction business.
Thank you. We're being mandated by the county and our province to grow. We can't stop the growth. But as a community, we can dictate how this growth is going to happen. It's got to be conscious overall. It has to be fair to all concerned. We can't allow developers to come here, do what they want, leave, and us cleaning up the mess and paying for what they left behind. I'm a fan of tiny homes and smaller dwellings. As a community, we need to tell the developers what we want, and our administration as well. Those administrators are our employees. Remember that. And the people in front of you, we're civil servants. We're listening to you. But you have lost your voice, and I'm one of them. What is it that we want as a community? We want green space. We want clean water. We want water supply and water retention. As was mentioned, yeah, we lose a lot of water in groundwater, but there's technology now that we can keep that water. We don't need Collingwood, I hope, in the future, if we do things right. But it has to be a community effort, not a handful of people in Alliston, not a handful of people that are sitting in front of you. It's you, it's us together that will make difference in this community. What is it that you want? What do you want to see? Do we need these $3,000, $4,000 or square foot homes? Or do we want something smaller? But it's the administration that says, no, you can't put in an 800 square foot home or a 600 square foot home. It has to be this way. Well, if I bought a piece of land, I want to do what I want in it. Will it lower value? Well, not really if there's a neighborhood of them. We can grow upwards as well. It doesn't have to be just houses. Going upwards in a multi-level dwellings in a small, tiny home version can be affordable. It could be sustainable. The lower floors could be catered to handy-capable individuals, maybe some seniors. Turn them into little communities, but with still the whole community in place. It has to be consciously done. But we got... Thank you.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, no worries at all. It is, with the province mandating development and it being a local concern, how do you hope to balance residential and economic development with environmental sustainability in the small town feel here in New Tecumseth?
I feel like maybe that's more than one question. Okay, 3 minutes. New Tech is forecasted to grow by about 35,000 people over the next 30 years. So we're forecasting our numbers out to 2051. This is coming from the counties, working through our municipal comprehensive review process as we speak. So we are going to have to make some tough decisions. I think we're going to have to build up a little bit more than building out, or we're going to create sprawl here, which we are very close to doing if we continue to eat up all of our farmland. I think there should be a focus on intensification. So garden suites, which are the separate suites in people's backyards. Second suites, which are separate suites attached to people's houses. These need attention in our zoning bylaw so that people can do these and that our seniors can age in place. I don't want my parents to have to move out of town away from me. I want them to stay right here where we can be a family. And I have my oldest daughter is 19. I don't want her to have to move a half an hour or 45 minutes away from me so that she can rent her first apartment. I want her to be able to stay here with us. I think protecting our green space now is so important, because if we don't do it now, it will never happen and it will get eaten up because the province is just going to continue to tell us, do this, do this, do this, and we're going to run out of land. We're not making any more land. We need to cherish some of the land that we have, and we need to protect it because it's absolutely worth it. I also think part of building a sustainable community is that we need to attract more local employment. We cannot continue to grow as a bedroom community. We have some of the best skilled workers in the country, and we need to promote that to companies looking to expand. Like I said, I want to focus on green space and building upon our trail system. And intensification, because we have to decide. So we get downloaded these population numbers. We have to decide how we're going to open up our settlement boundaries. Where are these houses going to go? What are these houses going to look like? And it's going to be a really, really important 4 years that we make these decisions, because these decisions will last a lifetime.
All this talk of development, we don't have water. Like without the water to service them, all these numbers are out the window. The best case scenario is maybe 4 years to bring on a new plant in Collingwood. And that's if it's 6 years. And we're looking at a minimum of $70 million for our share, which is upsized because we've approved more developments. And that's the other thing with past councils, is they never paid attention to the infrastructure part of approving development. They just went ahead knowing, especially the big example, the Flato MZO, knowing that we were out of water, they still gave their approval to that development, which I believe is over 1,000 houses. That obligates us now to service that development and any new development. So it's great, and the problem with speaking last on some of this is, they say some of your points. I'm a major proponent of urban intensification, build up. I know there's been some exciting proposals in Alliston and the downtown core. Even the one at Smart Centers, while it looks a bit communism with all those utilitarian buildings, I think the idea is right. I mean, it'd be a good place. The one in West End, Alliston, where they would get rid of all the restaurants and build, you probably saw that one, build apartments. That looks a little bit of an overreach, but the idea is sound, as long as they replaced the ground floor with retail and restaurants again. Those kinds of things, but we don't have the water to support projects that come along that could be beneficial. It's all being driven by the development in the middle of the thousands of units. I think there's probably under a handful of farmers that still own their own land in town. They're farming it, but the speculators and developers own most of our countryside. So there's that pressure. There's a developer-friendly premier in Ontario who's already demonstrated he's not shy to shove development down your throat. But at the same time, again, we're constrained by our water services. And if Ford wants us to grow, then he should pay for the infrastructure upgrades rather than putting it all on us. Thank you.
As far as residential, I am totally against mass development. I would never vote, no matter what the circumstances, to build these new towns they want to put just beside us. We don't have the infrastructure. Like I said earlier, I've lived here my whole life, and I never thought I would see a day where we have a traffic jam coming into town. So we build all these homes and that. I know people need a place to live, but we don't have the infrastructure. If the province wants to mandate it to us, that's fine. They have the power to do that, but let them pay the bill to put the infrastructure in the ground. They can't just tell us go ahead. Well, they can, but the town's got to stand up to them and say, look, if you want us to have more people here, then you flip the bill. As far as business, Bradford, West Gwillimbury has a big advantage on us being right at the highway. If you own a large company with transportation costs, they're going to look there before they look here. And it's just a matter of dollars. We got to attract more small business. We have a facade program that is rarely used. The town has to work with the people that want to open a small business. Get rid of all the red tape. Help them out. Don't charge them so much they're bankrupt before they can put the open sign on the door. And unfortunately, the way they act right now, that's what's happening. I'm in the heating and air conditioning business, and Joe, I relate to a lot of what he had said. And what really irritates me about the developers when they come in town for the homes is they will present their plan, but at the last minute, all of a sudden they want to cut all the setbacks back. And generally, council just goes along with it. But then you have problems. You have kids that want cars. Where do you park? Suddenly your driveways aren't big enough. You're not allowed to park on the road, even if somebody's had to drink too much. Oh, no, you can't park there. You got to go. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion. And the town has just got to realize that small business is what this country was built on, and we have to help people. But they just make it so hard. And like I said, most people, when they look at it, they don't even move forward because they're going to be bankrupt before they even get that door open. So council has to work harder and be serious about helping people and making this town a place. We have to become a town of destination where people want to come here and people want to move here, buy a house up the street, not build mass development. So, thank you.
I was just looking at my notes, and this was a tough question to go last with. I'm like, yep. People have really covered quite a bit of my shared sentiment. But for the record, I would want to just echo that attainable housing is a fundamental right. And for the considered growth that is projected and mandated to us, the infrastructure, waste, and water are of key concern. When I've been going door to door, it was tempting to talk to residents about the exciting growth opportunities with optimization, the conservation area in Tottenham alone, parks and recreation. There's so much that we could do to optimize existing infrastructure. And that is part of a sound strategy for continuing to temper growth, residential growth, with business development. But the bottom line is, without the less glamorous, sort of nobody really wants to tackle the tough, dark issues around waste and water and sprawl and the consumption of our farmland. These are really the key issues that are going to determine whether or not and how we grow with this mandated population. So I would like to add, in addition to all of the great points that the fellow candidates have said today as well, I think that residents that I have heard from and had the honor to talk to have talked about the planning bylaw departments and streamlining not just the permitting around business development, but the permitting around residential renovation, addition, and expansion within our own property. And I think that that lends itself to people being able to consider their existing homes as something that could, in the future, have an income apartment or an income property attached to it. All of this continues to circle back around to transportation, roads, and safety because, as Jess just said, parking is a huge issue. The condition of the infrastructure that is going to support the vehicles that go along with all of the growth and development, whether it's apartment, whether it's a home, whether it's a small home, whatever the concept is, the infrastructure, parks and green space to support the growth is what needs to be addressed first. So part of the council's role in this next 4-year term is we can't get caught up in the excitement and glamour of making promises for development using taxpayer dollars until we have spent some time and some serious discernment and consideration on how those tax-paying dollars are going to support waste and water. Being a rebel.
I think you answered the question, did I not? I was the first to go in this round.
Okay, so yeah. And just to make this run a little smoother, when you guys have 20 seconds, I'll lift my hand so you guys have an idea of when the timer's going to end there. So in your view, what are the biggest fiscal challenges facing the community, and how do you hope to address them?
The biggest fiscal challenges are,
Fiscal challenges, monetarily speaking.
yeah. I think we're trying to put the burden of water and sewage on the town, and trying to balance that with a $77 million, I believe it was invested in to bring the water to Tottenham. As I said earlier on, the point is not trying to increase revenue, because increasing revenue by putting burden on people, increasing their taxes, or putting more subdivisions so you can get more revenue from the houses, from the property taxes, that's not the issue. The issue is trying to run a budget, trying to run a balanced budget, trying to cut the unnecessary spending. That is the biggest issue, and that's what makes a successful business versus a very unsuccessful business. I believe that we should always protect our farmland. We are, one of the most beautiful farmland communities, rural communities here in Ontario. There's a lot of other areas that are not developed, are not suitable for farming, that we could actually build. We can actually put housing in. We can work with the land there to put more communities. I just wanted to touch actually base on some of the comments that were said, that the province is mandating to us that we have to grow by this much. These are projections based on them and their decision to put in more houses, and then we have to fill these houses. They're not putting any consideration to our own kids that are growing in these communities, our own elderly parents and family that want to stay in the communities. So yes, I do agree with building medium to low rise in town and keeping urban and rural, but I'm against development, as Jess has said, because it's not a mandate. We look at Flato, for instance. Flato, on the MZO website itself, it says that Flato's CEO has paid a substantial amount of donations to the Doug Ford campaign in 2018. And as a result, he gets to call the shots and put in housing where they are. But when you speak to the municipality about this, the provincial government about this, they say it was done with council approval. So this council that was sitting 4 years ago, this past 4 years ago, approved these developments. They're doubling the size of the town, not in the next 30 years. If you look on the map, the development around Tottenham is scary. I haven't been in Tottenham for many, many years because I live outside of town. I usually go to Beaton or the West End. But it's becoming a little mini Toronto. Traffic jams, sirens going on, etc. So I think the fiscal, to balance our budget is the key point here. It's not to try to get more revenue. It's but balance the budget that we have. Allow people to sever off a plot of land on their own to house their kids, etc.
Thank you. Water is the biggest issue that we have, as was mentioned before. It's costing us millions of dollars just to bring water to our municipality. Another huge expense is the thought that development pays for itself. We had an ex-minister of housing, Mr. Gilchrist, come and talk in front of council. And he shared with council that development does not cost, especially when our municipality was charging 1/3 of the cost for development than any other municipality around us. There's ways that we got to look at this as a business. trying to sell off our assets, yours and mine, the buildings that the old council chambers, once the other, and the library, these are our buildings. Trying to sell them just to pay off some interest, in my opinion, is a mistake. We can get into landlords. We can rent them out. We can generate money from our own lands. We have a beautiful community center that we can rent out. There's ways to generate money. The community, the park, with the pond, country, thank you, that one. It's sitting empty. They locked the gate. There's so many brilliant people around us and so many volunteers. We can build a building, we can rent it out. There's so many ways we can generate money. We gotta start looking at this as a business. Cutting cost in our administration, the way this business is run, with a fine-tooth comb. There's something definitely wrong in that building in Alliston. We're hemorrhaging money with council and administration asking for consultants every 4 years on the same subject. And then it goes into a filing cabinet and forgotten. And then 4 years later, they pull it out, and they don't pull it out. They hire new consultants. And sometimes it's not even 4 years. Somebody changes words, and they got to hire consultants. It's a business. We got to run it as a business. Thank you.
Okay, so our biggest fiscal challenges. Our projections have us, and by us I mean New Tecumseth, reaching its debt threshold by 2025. So what that means is that the province will come in and basically babysit us. That's a big problem. We lose control of our municipality, essentially, if that happens. Right now, as of the end of 2021, New Tecumseth is in debt by $68.5 million. So these next 4 years are not going to be glamorous. What they need to be about is what we absolutely need, not what we want. Like what we need, better roads, quality services offered, and this is the unglamorous part, our asset management. It's necessary. If we look at between roads, bridges, stormwater, water, and wastewater, there's an $80 million funding gap. So we really, really have to be fiscally conservative in this next 4 years to make sure that we stay on track and to make sure that we can continue to offer the services through Parks and Rec that our residents need. I mean, we really need to be very, very conservative when it comes to spending money. And we need to go line by line through these budgets because we have to cut some costs out of our budget. New Tech runs on a $40 million budget. That's what it was just shy of $40 million in 2022, right? So it's time to stop the frivolous spending. We can't afford 3 and 4 and 5 of everything. We come together, act as one town, finally, and we really have to tighten the belt this next 4 years. It's necessary, or it's going to get out of control because it's close. Thank you.
The town has a spending problem, absolutely. Again, the 13% projection for levy increases just tells you the jump it went, I believe it was under 2% the year before. Now it's going up to 13%. A lot of that is salary-driven benefits. The Sunshine Club, we can all argue whether $100,000 is reportable or not, but New Tecumseth is not a private enterprise. And I understand Joe's thing about running it like a business, but when you run something in government like a business, you don't have libraries, you don't have public transit, because those don't make profits. Try to close down a library and see the outcry. So I understand, again, the business part of it, but the spending issue, and again, when we're building a plan that's based on development charges, there are good debts at this lower level because fixing roads, an indoor pool, we got a lot of bridges. Those things cost millions of dollars, and we can't just pay for them in one shot. Those are long-term debentures. Bad debt is what we're headlong into with the administration center. The development charges don't even cover any of that. It's already blown past. It's already into the contingency. It's months behind. That is what's going to get us, because that's going to be taxation as well. The financial plan has fallen apart because it was based on selling, or at least a good chunk of it, based on selling the current administration center. I understand they didn't even get a bid, because what are you going to do with it? There's the idea of there was talking of affordable housing as helping out. I did a quick check on different development charges. The City of Toronto does a deferred development charges payment program for rental, institution, and nonprofit development. For rental and institutional, they start charging on occupancy and then give you 5 annual payments to pay it off. And for nonprofit, it's 20 years. So there are opportunities to use development charges and increase affordable housing on a program like that. Thank you.
Thank you. As Tony brought up, the new administration building has put everyone with higher taxes for a long time to come. My grandkids will be still paying that, and they haven't even been born yet. They rushed it through. They didn't have to. It was like, we got to get this done before this term is over. They didn't go out to the public at all. I would like to thank Stephanie. At least she fought against it, unlike the rest of them. And it's just, I would like to see how much it costs. And as Tony said, they can't sell the building they have. So maybe if we can get a final bill on what they've done, sell it, or stop it, and then try and sell it to someone. The town has worked in that building they're in now since amalgamation in '91. Yes, it's tight in there, but it's workable. They could move staff around up to the JOC. They'll argue that, well, we got to get up and walk over to the next office to find out what has to be done. They don't get off their chair. They phone. So as long as you keep each department together, we could save a lot of money by streamlining the way the system works. You're the shareholders. You're the ones paying the bills, or hoping not to have to cost more to pay the bills. But, and then you just got to go through the budget. There's a lot of stuff in the budget that doesn't need to be done right away. It can be put off. But it's presented to you as, oh, if we don't get that this time, the town's going to fall apart. So we have to stand up, whoever gets in those chairs, and go through that budget. There's millions of dollars that could be saved if you take the time to look at it and ask the questions about it. There's always a way to bring down the bill. That's a town's fantasy wish list, but it's not realistic. And whoever sits in them chairs has to say, this is not realistic. You can basically have one thing. The town has run so far without all these other items, and we could save millions of dollars if people would just do that.
Again, I find myself pleasantly surprised and inspired by the fact that I share the sentiment with so many people that are considering running for this position. I think the consistency and continuity in the council, the elected council's mindset is going to be really crucial in how we navigate the financial predicament that we're in. So I'll add a couple of things that are different because when I first decided to run, what was shared with me was the budget and the town plan, and it was quite a read. It's thick, as Stephanie was saying. It's hundreds and hundreds of pages, and takes some time to navigate. And as I was absorbing and processing, what was really coming to mind that I thought was pretty relevant was how many residents in Ward 8 alone, let alone in New Tecumseth, have access, time, interest, or the capability of navigating through such a detailed document that is really laying out the financial landscape and the future of your tax-paying dollars and how they're going to be spent. And so to encompass a lot of the key issues that we've talked about, I think the potential risk of insolvency that Stephanie mentioned is of critical concern. I think that one of the key responsibilities of the councillors, and one that I am prepared to take on should I be elected, is to create transparency around the spending. There's a lot of decisions that get made, large and small, and the residents and taxpayers in New Tecumseth are not aware. And it's not that they don't care, they do care. But there isn't an understanding and a transparency provided in a clear and timely fashion to allow for input and consideration before decisions are made and money is spent. And I think a role of a public servant is to work relentlessly to create that transparency so that, and resurrect forms of referendum, forms of polling and consensus, so that before money is spent, there is a voice that is brought forth to the council table that represents the wards and their best interests. I think that if people realized where money is being spent versus where they'd like it to be spent or where it should be spent, that level of transparency is what people deserve, and it's going to help the council make better decisions.
Listen, I want to really, really briefly just go across a couple of points because there seems to be discontinuity with supply-demand economics understanding here. Last year, in July, if you wanted me to show you a townhouse in Alliston, I would have shown you 2 or 3 that were available. That's all there was, and they would have been around $824,000, and they would have sold in a week or so. That was the reality back then. This July, I would have shown you 19 homes, and they would have been, on the average, less than $824,000, and they would have sat there for a few weeks. Supply, demand economics, we can't get away from it, okay? That's the reality. So obviously when I said that we need to build some more homes, I said we need to build some more smart homes smartly so that we have the proper supply in order to be able to give some relief to the existing taxpayers, because the cost of the infrastructure is not going to go down just because you don't build new homes. That's crumbling, it's going to crumble. So again, also build smartly what the type of homes you need so that there's a greater variety and there are rentals and whatnot. And we can go for hours on that, but let's not. Now, if you look at the long-term budget, the plan, on page 34, I think it is, there's a lot of warning for you. And it basically says that the projection is based on 3.5% interest, on 6% inflation for 2023, on 3% inflation from 2024 to 2031. Does anyone here think inflation this year or next year is going to be 6%? Or 3% from 2024 to 2031? Oh, no. Come on. It's 7.7 officially. It's probably 12.5 unofficially, and who knows what it is realistically. Okay? So the compounding cost now is far exceeded whatever's in that budget. So the first thing I'd like to do if I get in, by the graces of your votes, all 3 of you, is the budget that has to be opened up again, and we have to have forward projections based on realistic numbers so we know exactly where we're going in 5 years or 10 years. Otherwise, it's a joke. You can't, as an accountant, if you're an accountant, any of you, you cannot build a budget today, change all the rates, and expect the budget to be maintained. It just doesn't work that way. All right? And that should have been in there. Before this election even took place, those figures should have been in there. So we all know what we're voting for. All right? Now, in 2018, I was very clear, we can't build a center. We need to revise the existing building. I even gave them a plan on how to do it, what to expand. And also, I wanted to say we should have had a plebiscite, which is just another word for referendum, so that the voters en masse can say yes or no to this plan. But that's not what happened. 3 things were put forward, maybe 4, and the 2 were obviously more expensive than the one they wanted to push for. So you know what was going to happen. 20 seconds? Okay. And, I got all my points covered. There we go.
All right, so for the next question, this is specific to the ward councilors, so we'll start with Joe. For your ward, what are the biggest challenges you've heard from residents out campaigning, and how do you hope to address those challenges? And Joe, to start there.
The safety of the roads, the quality of the roads was one of the biggest things that I've heard. Unsafe intersections, railroad tracks, and the quality of the roads and the workmanship that these roads are built. Personally, I saw the quality of the roads when I was driving from door to door. So on the second concession, it's done piecemeal. Like, they don't do the whole thing. They don't do a proper job. There's nobody going behind them and saying, hey, this isn't done right. On the second line, there's no shoulder. Everybody that lives on a rural road knows that when the snowplow comes in the wintertime, they shove the snow and they flatten it out even past the shoulder. Well, when there's no shoulder and a 5-foot ditch right there, how many people are going to end up in a ditch? Not only that, when there's no shoulder, the asphalt itself starts to break apart right on the edges. So there's no quality. Nobody goes behind drilling holes and saying, yeah, this is 2 inches. My own road on the 6th line was broken and cracked a year after it was laid. This is poor maintenance. It's poor quality control. We're taking tenders, people in the administration center are awarding tenders, but nobody's looking after it afterwards. We're wasting money that way. And then they got to redo it again and again. Intersections that aren't safe was the 10th and the 6th. It came up a few times. Well, there were fatalities on it. Well, they just installed the flashing, warning, speed sign. What I noticed is that I have to be 20 feet away before this thing actually works because there's trees and I don't know who set it up. And the other one is the train, the whistle. Really? The train was there. Yeah. What can we do about it? Well, if growth is going to happen, eventually all these crossings are going to have gates on them. So maybe to save lives, we can ask them to put them in now. So another one that I heard about was the contaminated soil brought into the airport site. PCB contaminated soil. Our administration and our council member from that ward did nothing. They just shoved it to the...
What do I have for 20 seconds? Yeah, just ward councilors for this question specifically, for their individual.
Ladies first.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
It goes all the way down.
Then it goes back this way.
The 3 things that I've heard the most walking door to door from people, one is why the bus isn't in Tottenham. Simcoe County come up with their link system, and their theory was they wanted to connect all of the county. Well, they failed. They left us out. I've talked to them, Actually, one of the drivers and a couple other people are involved in it. And they said, oh, Tottenham doesn't need a bus. They tried it before, it didn't work. Well, I had my business on the main street, and that bus they were talking about, the problem he had is he didn't have a schedule. He would just show up whenever he showed up. So you're not going to stand there for an afternoon waiting for the bus. So you can't say that Tottenham doesn't need it because we didn't use it. I mean, it makes no sense. If I do get elected, the first thing I'm going to do is ask council to direct the county to add the bus to Tottenham immediately. If council doesn't like that, I have no problem going and speaking to the county councillors myself. It is something that I just cannot fathom why they would leave us out. It makes absolutely no sense. From Beaton to the middle of Tottenham and back to Beaton stop is 12 kilometers. A bus doesn't make money. It's like recreation. It doesn't generate money. It's a service. So to leave us out of that service is absolutely ridiculous. Second one is the speeding. We have too many Jeff Gordons and NASCAR drivers in this town. We need to get the police to have a more of a consistent presence to slow these people down. They seem to have no respect for people trying to walk across the street. They think that road's theirs and everybody else should get out of their way. Well, they're totally wrong, and we need the police to get that through their head. Slow down before you hurt somebody or even worse. The third thing is the water. It was a good thing what they did, add the water, but it hasn't solved the problem. I've talked to one neighbor. She said it actually helped me. The next neighbor's still getting yellow water. It's not necessarily just the water. The old pipes in the ground need to be changed to have a proper system. What they've done is it's like putting a new engine in an old car and then trying to sell it as a new car. It's still an old car. And that's what they're trying to sell it to us as. I would like to see the Public Works Department go to the people that are still having problems on a one-to-one basis and try and figure out what it is. If it's a pipe coming from the road into the house, well, then get it cleaned. They're talking about a 13% increase in the water next year. Well, at least we can do is give you water that you can drink, wash your white clothes in that don't come out yellow. Thanks.
Well, as I'm also campaigning in Ward 8, I think that Jess and I probably heard water is definitely remains a key issue. And although residents do seem to be satisfied with and feeling, I think the sentiment is a little more, it's been long overdue, but now we do have access to the pipeline. The request that I've heard from residents is that we still remain vigilant on testing the water to ensure that over a 12, 24, 36 month period of time that the toxicity levels remain dissipated and that the water remains clean. Water again, and it was mentioned earlier this evening, a secondary source is still required. So water being solved is what a lot of residents are concerned about, is that it's kind of, that's done, let's, wipe it off the books and move on to something else. And I think residents are concerned that it's not going to stay something of a focus and that it needs to. Transportation, roads, and safety, the Lynx bus, 100%. In addition to it, though, really interesting conversations about the conditions of the roads. And there's residents within Tottenham, and I'm sure within the Beaton and Alliston community as well, but residents that I spoke to whose roads that they are living on have not been paved in 50 years. And they are deplorable. And I think we all know some of the hidden gem streets in town that are of particular interest when it comes to repaving. But again, it's all connected, and it links into a bigger topic, which is we still have the transport trucks using the main street of Tottenham as a thoroughfare. Driving to past just this morning, the 5th line and Highway 27, the traffic lights are up now at that intersection. And those traffic lights were the last piece of a puzzle that would allow for a bypass of trucks moving from Alliston down the 10th, out the 5th, into the 400, reducing, not eliminating, but reducing some of the volume of transport trucks that come through our town. The bottom line is we have twice as many vehicles and no end in sight of transports coming through town. So the paving and repaving of our streets is just going to continue. Oh, no. Last but not least, I'll say this quick. Tottenham residents are concerned that we are not well represented at council because of tax dollar allocation by population within the town. And that is something that I am going to advocate for and consistently follow up on.
No, you know what? No, nothing to do with you. It's me.
Okay, good.
Okay. We're all good. We're all good.
Yeah.
All right. I got my own stopwatch here, so I'm okay. So a couple of issues came up when I was knocking on doors. When you go to the far corner towards Schaumburg, surprisingly, a few residents even say that they don't feel like they're part of New Tecumseth. They feel like they're part of Schaumburg. You know, go figure. Again, in the ward, there are different areas and the different needs in different areas because of the diversity of the type of people you have. Now, a number of them mentioned the roads that are not paved on the 18th, on part of the 20th, as an example. Most said we'd like to have our roads paved. One said, please don't pave the road because then all the idiots from Toronto will come on my road when there's a jam up on 27. So it kind of goes both ways. Speed, yes, speed is an issue, and there might be the possibility that at some point we'll have to look at municipal speed cameras. I don't like those things. I don't like being watched, but then I drive the speed limit. But they may be a necessity. On the fourth line, I was talking to some people who said, we're afraid of getting out of our driveways between the 10 Side Road and Tottenham because no one slows down and no one gives you time to turn in. They just whip around you. So there's an accident waiting to happen there, and it's going to be a tragedy when it does. And I'll tell you, everyone was concerned with the taxes, the projected increase in taxes, and also the realistic increase that's going to be higher than the one that they put in there because, of course, things have changed, right? The transit system, Jess brought that up, and thank you for that, Jess. I think I have a blurb on that on my website. And again, if you're not part of Ward 7, please feel free to go to the website. There might be still something there that you can use for your ward. But in 2018, I gave them an outline in deputation of a transit plan that would be intercommunal, so Tottenham, Beaton, Alliston specifically. And it's based on a successful plan that's in operation down in Quinte West, which is where Trenton is, if you guys know where that is. And it's supported itself by fees and also through sponsorship. So we didn't really need Simcoe to give us this current plan. And although it's helping a few people, I understand that. If you look at the actual ridership for 2021, it is in the website. I don't have it here, but I believe the actual daily ridership averaged 39 or something like that. 2022 numbers are going to be higher, and before that, of course, COVID was an issue, so we have to be fair. And one of the reasons they're hesitating on Tottenham is because there was no business model that would support the extra cost, which is not what a transit system is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a community helper, okay? I believe that the management company for the Simcoe links is actually foreign, but I'm not sure of that. Look it up if you want. Apart from that, I'm not sure what other points I want to bring up. I mean, community togetherness, but we can do that with inter-community activities to put town against town in a friendly fashion that will allow communities to feel like they're part of New Tecumseth, not just Beaton, Tottenham, Alliston, and somewhere else. And my time is up.
All right, so there is an opportunity. We have about half an hour left before we go to closing remarks there for the audience to write down their questions. I'm not sure if any have been added there, but if we want to take a couple minutes for you guys to write down some questions, if anybody's interested in asking anything. There. No takers?
Yeah, can we just raise our hand and ask questions?
Yeah, just as long as we keep it cordial and appropriate, then my idea with the paper was just to make sure it was all fair.
Take a mic and run out with the mic.
Yeah. But let's just try to keep it, cordial. So who would like to ask the first question? Anybody interested? Oh, yeah.
Of all the people at that table, how many people are on the current council? Okay. How many people have been in a past council? Okay, that's all I want to know.
All right, perfect. Any other takers? Yep.
I don't think I need.
Oh, just for the live stream, because it's being recorded, right?
Thank you. One of the questions I have, and it seems to be the thorn in the lion's paw, is that through development and infill, there's really no deep discussion about parking. If you have a townhouse and they say, well, there's enough parking in that townhouse, there's a garage and there's one parking, but the reality is there's no transportation in this town. There's no subway, there's no train, there's no bus to get you out of this town. It's all done through transportation. And most of the people that work in this town, forgetting COVID for a minute, commute out of this town. So they have at least not one car, but two cars. So the question is, where are they going to park? And when this development happens, the question is, it seems to be that it's the elephant, the emperor has no clothes. It's just there's a parking spot there, and that's what the zoning requires. But it's not going to work that way, and it doesn't work that way. If you look down here on Mill Street, where those new townhomes were built, there's only one car allowed, not allowed, but that's what parks in that car. And in front of there is a no parking zone for fire. But you drive by there every morning or on the weekend, there's cars parked there all the time because they have to. So in all parts of this town where that development takes place, that's going to happen. But nobody seems to want to deal with that issue. And I agree with Joe, like smaller homes are better and you can do that type of thing, but you still have to deal with the issue of an automobile and where those cars are going to be.
Perfect. So if you could just condense the question maybe, and then we'll give all the candidates 2 minutes.
What are you going to do about that?
Who do you want to answer first?
We'll continue.
Peter has his hand up.
There you go.
All right.
I was at school. Okay, well, you choose, but I want to answer the question.
Yeah, okay, we'll start with Stephanie just because she was technically first there.
Okay, so this issue, I did bring a motion to council. I believe it was probably in the spring. It was this year. And the issue is when we have developers developing, they're required to have a certain amount of parking spaces. But one of those spaces is in the garage. Now, us being Canadians, we know we have 4 seasons. We have bikes, we have toys, we have ATVs, we have hockey equipment. We need garage space as part of our house. You know, very few people I know, I think I actually only know one person who attempts to park a vehicle in their garage. Nobody does. There's no room. So we're building these houses with a mom and a dad and kids who grow up with 1 parking space. Maybe 2 if you drive 2 little, like those tiny cars, which most people don't anymore. So there will be a report coming back to council probably in the new year that addresses whether we can change that in our zoning bylaw so that the garage doesn't count. I want 2 surface parking spaces minimum for townhouses. And surface means outside. Doesn't count the garage. I don't think we should count it anymore because of exactly the problem you described.
The reality is our garbage cans take up the garage. Again, we're back to this is our town. We dictate what we want. Enough with letting developers get the biggest profit margin that they can out of our land. Yeah, they bought the land, but we still dictate what goes on. That's what we need to do. We got to tell them what we want. So it comes back to community. You're right. There is no space, and most of the
20 seconds.
Oh. Most of the garages are really small.
Absolutely. I think we're looking at this from inside the box. We're always looking at what are we going to do to appease to the developers. The point is that the developers bought these lands as rural farming communities, and they are being allowed by us, by the council, to develop these lots, to develop these lands. And they're not, they are trying to get every buck that they can. They're shoving, like if you walk in Beaton on Stockton Trail, you find 3 houses being shoved in between 2 houses in the middle of the road. And people, I can only imagine their lives there. The noise, I can't even speak to people on the doorsteps because it's so noisy. The livelihood is just becoming trash. I think the issues with roads is the same thing. The more usage, the more we're going to have roads being a problem. The point is that we cannot let the county dictate to us how much we're going to grow. We cannot let the province dictate to us how much we're going to grow. We need a strong, as I said in the beginning, a strong mayor and a strong deputy mayor to stand up and say, no, we're not going to grow at a rate that's unsustainable. Unsustainable for the environment and unsustainable for the people, the residents of these places. Now, there's county roads and there's municipal roads. The county roads are the responsibility of maintenance by the county. That's where our money goes. Stephanie had mentioned that. It goes from our taxes and it goes up to the county. Now, these roads can be developed prior to putting in subdivisions. They need to be developed and they need to go up further north. There's no problem with commuters. You know, when I moved here 12 years ago, everyone in my family was telling me you're moving out in the middle of the boonies. But we ended up moving, and we love it here because we want to be living in a rural community, not an urban community. We all see the problems with rural communities. I grew up in Ajax. I'm a first-generation immigrant, so I grew up in Ajax, and I saw how it changed drastically.
So you brought up an important question, regarding parking, and then you also brought up the issue of transit and whatnot. My first house was in Tottenham on Potter Crescent, townhouse, 1 garage, which eventually is filled up with everything. I did mention taking my car in there, but then, you know, your fiance moves in, there's 2 cars. If you live in a townhouse and you have kids, they're going to be 16 eventually, 3 cars, 4 cars, a motorcycle, whatever. Some communities are putting in overflow parking for those specific neighborhoods, such as if you look down in Tottenham on Taunton Avenue or Taunton Avenue, whatever it's called, in the new townhouses, there's some overflow parking next to the little parkette. But it only gives you about 4 or 5 spaces. Now, when you have a family, you know, inviting people over for Christmas, and the whole block invites people for Christmas, that fills up pretty quick. So we have to look at making sure that we have some overflow parking built in. And I hate to see cars on lawns in townhouses because then it basically just becomes a row of cars. But front yard permit parking might have to be a possibility. It isn't always practical. And then when it comes onto the building, yes, we have to tell builders, and we don't care what you want. And no, don't mandate for smaller lots, which the minimum in town is 19 by 96 feet, by the way. We need to have space for that extra car in there, or you need to spend money on overflow parking, and it's not coming out of our pockets, it's coming out of yours, if you want to build these homes. And the bus system, again, I had a system designed, or not designed, but based on the one down in Presqu'île. And that was designed really to help people from Tottenham, Beaton, and Alston interact. And I proposed that because when my son was getting a job, 20 seconds, I asked another child next to me, I said, why aren't you looking in Tottenham or in Beaton or in Alston? He goes, I have no way of getting there. I have no way of getting there. I had a flexible job. I can drive my son to the Walmart to work for 3 years in a row, straight. All through the day, but other parents just did not have the option. So we needed a community bus, not a regional bus.
I think it's a complex issue because not only do we need to address growth moving forward and what we would mandate from developers as far as allocation for parking, but it doesn't solve the problem that we have right now, which is the existing congestion of vehicles. And what's interesting in speaking with residents in my campaigning is people have spoken about a real appetite and desire to have the main street of Tottenham, in particular the Four Corners, revitalized. There needs to be a focus on attracting and retaining business and just an overall better optimization and flow along our main corridor. But anyone that lives in Tottenham or has to navigate through it understands that the parking on the main street of Tottenham is somewhat of a catastrophe from Brown Street, like from town limit to town limit, north to south, or south to north rather. And we're in this conundrum because we want to promote and attract and encourage people to be accessing the main street rather, and leasing out space and implementing new businesses and services, but there's nowhere to park. And all of the parking on both sides of the main street are creating traffic hazards, as there was a really serious accident at the corner of Queen Street and Rogers Road because people are trying to make the left-hand turns off of all of the side streets onto the main street. You can't see because of all the parked cars. So we've got a conundrum, and I know this doesn't directly answer your question, but I think that looking at this looking at some of the property and side streets that are coming off the main street and understanding how parking is being utilized there is going to be a key issue that we have to address.
Thank you. I touched on your question earlier in my remarks. I see a lot of the problem with the developers. Like you said, they come in at the last second, want to set all the setbacks back, takes you parking, so then people park on the grass. And that makes your street look terrible, and everybody's, creating the mud holes for their car, but they have no choice. It even goes back to, I'm in the heating and air conditioning business, and what I find sort of funny and sad is our bylaw for placing an air conditioner doesn't work because they build the houses so tight together you can't put it on there and be far enough away from the property line, so you have to put it in your backyard, and then when you're sitting out there with your family or friends on a Sunday, you're trying to talk over the noise from the air conditioner. So the town's got to stand up to these guys. They're only doing this because they want that extra few bucks for those 2 or 3 houses to put the money in their pocket. Then they're gone. We're left with the problem. We have to stand up to them and tell them, no, that's. The other thing about parking I would like to see in the new subdivisions, Tecumseth Pines, they have a parking lot. They could easily build that into a subdivision agreement. It doesn't have to be right in the middle where everybody is. You could put it in the corner. But if you have overnight guests, they could park there. If your son or daughter doesn't have enough room in your parking lot, they could park there. It's very easy to solve in my mind, but it's never enforced. But it's got to the point now, like we are a commuter town, and we need that. I mean, some of the streets with all the rut marks are looking terrible. But people are forced to do it because council doesn't stop the developers from building the houses so tight together. So as far as the downtown, like Andrew said, that's a very tough one. I mean, it's already built up. It's very tough to how you would fix that overnight. That would take quite a while.
We have Tony over here yet to answer, and then we'll move on to closing remarks.
I've covered every council since 1990, and in each of those terms, the development applications that would come in, those lots were getting smaller and smaller, and the houses getting larger. And I think the situation in Tottenham that you were talking about, is that the one? Is that the subdivision by the grocery store, the end? Was that late 80s, 90s that was built? Or? Oh, I'm thinking of those early days. They used to call it the barracks. That's how I heard that subdivision in Tottenham where they're all on top of each other. Gary Dorland, back in the early 90s, proposed a sidewalk program, and he wanted to put sidewalks across those lawns, and they wanted to tear him down because the lots were already small, and to cut the sidewalks, pedestrians are walking right past your living room window. So what was what I always noticed happened was the developers, the plans would get approved, all that out of the way, they'd come back with red line revisions. They've already gone through with all the approvals, then they come back, and that's how we lost apartment buildings. A lot of those early development applications used to have apartment buildings in them. They would get approved, and then they would come back and say, well, there's no market for apartments. Maybe let us build 8 more or whatever it was in place of those apartments. That's how we lost those. You just saw a recent example of it a couple weeks ago. The Biffus development arm came forward. They have a chunk of land. They wanted to squeeze 8 houses on this piece of land that doesn't fit 8 houses. And to make it, they have to shrink the lots. They have to shrink the landscaping. You're not going to get visitors there. There's no parking. Listen to a scanner in the wintertime. Neighbors are fighting each other over snow piles. Did it get approved? The Biffus application, yes. Who approved it? Council. They didn't even pull it for discussion. And it all happened within a 2-week period. It was a planning public meeting. Next day, I think it was committee of adjustment. He got his lots. And at the first council, it just passed. So those are precedents for smaller lots. So we're in a bind because they've already approved these smaller lots. So how can you, it's an uphill battle now to control. Name the names that approved it. The entire council. It wasn't even pulled, so it was just a consent agenda item. It was passed. So I would vote against red line revisions.
For all the questions from the audience. We have 15 minutes left just to get into closing remarks with each candidate having 2 minutes each. So we'll start the order. Who started last? Stephanie? So we'll move to Tony. You can start with your closing remarks there at 2 minutes.
Well, thank you for coming. To everyone watching at home, hello. I'm not sure what more there is to say other than the top priority really is the taxes, and as soon as the first opportunity comes, that budget has to be wide open, a full list of everything that is raised by taxation should be itemized completely so we get an idea, because that's really where you're going to save. There's only one way to bring down taxes, and that's to attack spending. And I know the communications manager in the town, but that position is now over $100,000. That, to me, tells me that we're out of control on the labor, benefits, the growth, because that stuff is straight taxation. Water. Again, we don't have water, double-digit rate increases for the next 3 years. I think in 2023, they're projecting 18%. And then it compounds. Our assessments, I believe, are still at 2016. So we haven't had yet a reassessment. So you can imagine, as soon as they come back and MPAC comes, and it's now, let's even say, 2021 value, that 13% taxes is now on what you think you can sell your house now, as opposed to what it was in 2016. And you know that your house prices, if you sold, maybe not right now because of interest rates, but a year ago, you know, just imagine being taxed at that rate, and that's coming. They're only going to sit on this MPAC reassessment hold for so long. Doug Ford, I think, delayed it. That's why we're still at 2016.
Me? Yeah, okay. Thanks, everyone, for coming out this evening. These meetings are very important. I believe they should be happening more often throughout the 4 years. You can put out your number, your email, but very few people will actually call. But having a meeting like this, when we're face-to-face and you can ask questions and get the answers, I think is very important, and they should happen. Tottenham's been ignored the last few years, and that has to change. And with my commitment, my experience, and the strong voice, I guarantee you Tottenham will not be left behind again. I respectfully ask for your vote so you once again can have a councillor who stands up for you. Thank you.
All I would like to say about the experience that is not per se with the current council or any of the previous councils, but I think that it would be fair to say that experience has not always translated to effectiveness. And I am asking for your vote because I believe that I bring to this table and the role that's in front of us a fresh approach, experience navigating corporate politics, and a care and consideration that I will be extending to every resident in Ward 8 through approachability, availability, and strong communication. The commitments that I made, I think they're not on my sign, there are on others, but my slogan for my campaign was transparency, empathy, and accountability for a prosperous tomorrow. I believe that the financial crisis that we are heading into is paramount, and I believe that transparency is what you deserve, and every single nickel of your tax-paying dollars that is being spent or decided upon in council, you should have full, complete, transparent access to how that is flowing. I believe that we need to understand each other, and an empathetic, considerate, and highly communicative approach is what is needed by a councillor. And I believe that every councillor that is elected to this new term should be 100% accountable for their actions, decisions, and behavior. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity. This doesn't happen enough. And of all the voters in New Tecumseth that are eligible, only about a third, maybe 35% are going to vote. And out of that group, only a small fraction is here, a very minuscule fraction. And many people, unfortunately, go out and basically vote for whoever has the most signs, which is unfortunate, but that is the reality. So you need to, when you have a chance, talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends. If they haven't arrived here, then discuss it with them. Now, most of you are not from the ward I'm in, so I'm just giving you this general advice. Speak to your neighbors, speak to your friends, post it if you have such a thing, a site, and just tell them what you feel so that people can understand and hopefully go to individual sites and get a better idea of what the candidates are saying, and they can base their vote based on policy rather than personality or person. There's just too much of that. I did touch on the absolute importance of opening up the budget and re-examining everything based on the current and projected inflation numbers, not on the ones that are in there, so that we properly can understand where we're going and have a proper direction. I also want to mention that this is not royalty, this is democracy. So when people talk about experience, you have to understand that before they became a councillor or whatever, they were not experienced. They had no experience. They had to start somewhere. So it's odd that people will say, I have the experience, vote for me, whereas 4 years or 8 years or 12 years before they said, I don't have the experience, but give me a shot, I'll go try, right? So again, vote for the policy, not the person, not the personality, vote for the policy. And I want to again thank you. Please, although you're not in my ward, take a flyer. If it has ideas that you can express into your ward, then please do so.
Well, thank you all for coming and for hosting this great opportunity. A lot of people ask me, how do you balance a busy practice, a busy clinic? How do you run, and how are you going to be effective as a deputy mayor and have a busy family with 4 kids? My answer is, my father-in-law always says, if you want something done, give it to the busiest person. And I feel that the reason why I'm running is because I feel that we're losing the town that we love very much. And it's because of decisions that were done by the previous councils, over the years. We're losing our beautiful town, the rural town. There's going to be a food crisis. Reports already show that food stamps or food banks are all-time high. And that's why I announced that half of my proceedings from the Deputy Mayor office will be going to food stamps or food banks in the community. I feel that there's a lot of people that want you to think that this position is a very, very elaborate position, that you only have to have the experience. As Peter said, 4 years ago they say, give me a shot, I'm unexperienced, but I've sat in some town hall meetings, give me a shot, I'll do a good job. And then 4 years now they say, well, give me the shot because I'm experienced. It's not that elaborate. It's basic. Cut the fat, run this fiscally responsible town, and you won't be end up in debt and in problems. Protect our rural community and provide accessible healthcare. That is the basis of what we should, as a town, aspire for. Thank you very much.
I said it before and I say it again. We need to come together as a community. We gotta join our voices, or the people that work for us are taken over, and they have. They're running this town. We lost our voices. We gotta make developers accountable for all the expenses, all of them. We gotta have them put the green spaces that we want, the parking that we want, the house sizes that we want. It's our town. We need growth that will serve us all and serve the next few generations. We can't look at this in a short-term time period. What we've seen until now is pieces here, here, and here, just to satisfy those squeaky wheels. We got to look at this as a finished product. How will this township be in 30 years when the growth is done? And build to that. Not for 5 years or until this developer finishes and then tear the roads up again for the next developer. No. We got to figure out the strategic plan that's been in place. Yeah, they change because we're being dictated on how much growth. We got to take control, but that comes with unity. Thank you.
Okay, guys, first I'm going to start off with a little PSA. This year, we are doing online voting, which is live until October 24th at 8 p.m. All you need is your voter card, and on that you will find a website and a code that you need. Advance polls this Saturday in Alliston from 10 to 4 at the old Alliston Memorial Arena, and in Tottenham on Wednesday, October 19th from 10 to 8 at the Tottenham Arena. So I just wanted to get that out there. First, I'd like to thank the organizers of the debate, everyone who came, and everyone who's watching on YouTube. Participating in our local democracy is very important. Your vote absolutely matters. I believe over the last term of council, I've demonstrated to you my willingness to listen, be accessible, and engage with residents and our community partners. Communication is the key to good, effective governance. I volunteer extensively in our community. Not only does this help our local groups deliver events I believe are essential, I connect with these groups and residents, which allows me to understand their needs. Constant and consistent communication is necessary for New Tecumseth to thrive. I will say the hard things and ask the hard questions here at home and at Simcoe County. I do my homework. I have a passion for municipal politics, and I am completely in love with New Tecumseth. I'm ready to work day and night to make this town continue to flourish. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out. It was Yep. Yep. And thank you for all the candidates for coming out. And yeah, take care and best of luck.